Hey, Lynn, can you hear us now?
You
I can't hear you. Hold on for just a second. I think that we've got a.
see on mute.
Well, that would be me. No, that would be me.
Go. We gotcha.
Good evening, everyone.
Y'all muted.
Very cool.
We have called this meeting to order. I think there's going to be a change in the agenda. And so I would entertain a motion to do such. And second,
Sorry, the motion doesn't need to be specific. It's the change on it. Yes.
we are changing the agenda from the present one that you have in front of you. To have an introduction of our new economic development director. Followed by a presentation from our consultant on the economic development.
So moved as stated.
Are all other items remaining on the agenda?
All,
It's ambitious.
all other items will be deferred to some future meeting, if such meeting occurs. Or when such meeting occurs.
So we've got A for sure, and then B is going to be the presentation.
Correct, and we're gonna put everything else on hold.
Do we need to put E on hold at this point, or can we just keep it back?
I would say put it on hold and we can just deliberate on what the new agenda would be. Okay? All right, so all in favor?
Aye.
All right. Opposed? So moved, the agenda has been changed. So to begin this agenda, we would like to have an introduction first of our new economic development director, and then just a brief statement of introduction from our committee.
Well, hello, everybody. I'm Christian Green, the religion and the color, if you need to remember my family. It's literally spelled the exact same way, so my family did me a favor, which is ironic given that they were atheist and agnostic. Funnier fact, my mother's maiden name was Church.
Wow.
So take that one in. So if you ever wonder why I'm weird, so yeah, I'm really pleased to be here. Family's gonna be here in 2 weeks. I've been bacheloring it for the last 2 weeks out of an RV, so I am very happy to have them here. Coming, Ashley's been putting up with me for 2.5 weeks, and Lynn and I have talked numerous times specifically about what she'll be presenting, which I'm excited to hear and implement, and then create the strategic action plan about that. My career has been about coming into challenged situations and turning them around and fixing them and then exiting, but it's not my plan this time. Moving my family 2,000 miles away from where we've been. I have no intention of leaving Stonecrest, and I know my challenges and what has happened in the past, but I also see that there's an incredible opportunity here with a fantastic community with a lot of assets and community leaders like yourselves who are very focused on moving it forward, which is very exciting for me because half the time when you're in economic development, getting community involvement is half the battle. And economic development is super sexy, but sit there and have everybody's excitement to be a part of that is really fantastic for me to be a part of. So I just wanted to thank you for letting me be a part of it, and I look forward to many years working together with you all to make some great things happen here.
Christian, without wanting to put you on the spot.
Yeah.
Very roughly and not in priority order, what do you see as some of the challenges so far?
Well, if I could speak candidly, it's the speed of trust. This community seems to have a significant issue, honestly, with trusting local government and then trusting people like myself to actually say and do what I say. So I think that that's probably one of the biggest challenges, in my opinion, is to be that voice of reason, to be trustworthy, to not do anything that hampers that, and to create synergy amongst everybody here. Also, it's about creating economic developers out of everyone that's here, you know. Economic development can only do so much. It's about making everyone a part of that team, and making that an initiative and part of it. And that's part of what is in Lynn's presentation as well. And so that was very exciting to see that, because I just saw it about an hour ago. So I know that Lynn has been working feverishly on that. You know, when it comes to other challenges, you know, I don't want to call them challenges. I mean, when you look at what we have as far as like the industrial area, I see enormous opportunities there as far as using the land to attract new industry, and specifically, I'm not a big proponent of distribution, especially given the infrastructure that's in the area with the 2-lane roads and things like that. I think that we can push more on manufacturing and kind of pushing higher wage earning jobs in that regard. So regarding the commercial corridors around the mall and things like that, I've been working feverishly on specifically experiential retail around the football stadium. So Glendale, which is where I came from, we hosted the Super Bowl, all of the entertainment district that's in that area. And when I initially went and started researching Stonecrest to apply and things, I saw all the dirt that was around your mall, and that was very exciting to me. I couldn't wait to you know, there's just a lot of opportunity here to work with the team. We've got a competent planning and zoning team, and a good group of people here that are dedicated to the city and moving forward, regardless of whatever the past history of what this city may or may not have been. To me, that is something to overcome and should be done in a short time if we do our jobs right. I'm about transparency. You know, my grandfather taught me that if you don't lie, you don't have anything to cover up. So just speak the truth all the time, and just be honest with the people. So that's who I am. That's what I am. There's no ulterior motives behind anything that's said. It's just straight out getting it done.
Thank you.
You bet.
Are you working at committees like this?
Yeah. Committees, councils, community action involvement, you know, and a large part of what we do in economic development from where I'm from is actually working a lot with internal groups and then external groups to accomplish the goals of economic development. So yeah, and I ran tourism in both Scottsdale and Glendale. So from the city's perspective.
Great.
Dr. Wagner. So I am Vice President with Avila Development. We're one of the largest landowners in the city of Stonecrest. We first came out to Stonecrest, purchased property here in 1998. I think it's the first time that I've walked some of the property just south of us. All of our property is situated within about a mile of where we are. Avila is primarily a multifamily developer, although we have developed public anchored shopping centers, office parks and things of that nature. Our main business is multifamily and market rate multifamily. We have about 1,500 units already on the ground here in Stonecrest. And we have give or take another 200 acres that we're exploring how to develop that. Personally, as I mentioned, I've been out here since 1998. I've been with Avila since 1992. I head up our development and construction teams, which are all in-house, and have been involved long before Stonecrest was a city, obviously, with DeKalb County trying to bring some attention to this southeast DeKalb area, and worked with the administration there, and then have worked with the administration here at Stonecrest. And then on the private side, I have served as the past chair for the Stonecrest Business Alliance, and currently I think we just had elections. I think I'm the treasurer this time around. I think. And then I also serve on the board for the Stonecrest Industrial Council. So very, very involved out here. Like I said, one of the largest tax payers in the city. And selfishly for that reason, we are very involved here. And are hopeful that we can lend our expertise, whatever that may be, and go forward with the city and make it as successful as it can.
Look forward to working with
You as well.
I'm Dave Marcus. I have been a resident here since 1991. Gosh, I'm not sure how to describe myself or my role, because I really don't have a role except as a self-appointed gadfly and transparency initiator and town crier and disseminator of information.
Good.
At one point, I founded a group, the Friends of Arabian Mountain, which was in the early 90s. It was a time when, depending on who you called in DeKalb County, either the park was a park or not, or a nature reserve or not, or was just land.
Right.
It was either open to the public or it wasn't, depending on the phase of the moon you called during. We had very specific goals, getting a ranger, a nature center, getting it secured so kids could no longer drive onto the granite, have bonfires, throw their beer bottles over their shoulders and do what kids do, which is a great deal of fun, but it's not a great place to do it.
Yeah.
We succeeded in all of those, and then moved our money to the Klondike Area Civic Association, rather than staying in business as a caretaker.
Okay.
Since the city has incorporated, I've been on various committees. I'm currently on the finance committee, have been on SPLOST and parks and probably a couple of others. And generally a gadfly.
What drove you to this?
So we could get a bloody Starbucks in the city. Self-interest, Christian, entirely self-interest, and Stonecrest's economic best times, I would say, were in the early 2000s, when the mall was thriving.
Yeah.
And the quality of goods and service was reasonably high. There's a lot more variety. I'd like to bring that back, and I think it should come back in spades, although it is a gradual building process. And part of my task is to try to say, when we see on Facebook, hey, do you think we could get a Whole Foods here? To say, yes,
I'm waiting for a
when
Trader
we can
Joe's.
get.
No one has said I want.
Oh,
Trader
no,
Joe's.
it's there.
No, keep reading.
there.
Okay. Keep reading.
All the Fresh Market and Sprout.
Right, okay.
Poconos.
Yeah.
Poconos. We want the more upscale retail and food. At the same time, we don't want to cut down trees. And by the way, I'm very much on that side.
Right.
But there needs to be a lot of education about what has to happen in order for us to be attractive to businesses such as that. And that's something I informally try to do every now and then. So I think last time somebody said they wanted a Trader Joe's, I said, how about just wanting a unicorn instead? It's equally likely until we have the disposable income and the traffic in the right places at the right times of day, and the reputation as a reasonably prosperous and safe and inviting city.
Yes.
Hello, hello everyone. My name is Andrew Wells, and I'm kind of like Dave. I struggle to define who I am.
Hi, this is Andrew.
Interim. I'm the interim president of Stonecrest Citizen Coalition. I think my interest is, I've served on a few committees as well. Between my wife and I, we probably served on 5 or 6. Very interested in what happens here. We've been here a whopping 6 years. We came right when the city was formed. I was a part of the Governor's Commission. Was on the public works side, working with Dr. Lee to develop the education initiative plan for this founding, council and mayor. My angle is the community and making sure that there is community voice, community input, that there is, an opportunity for community to watch transparently what takes place and also, to participate. So I think whether we're talking about, trees, arborists, or we're talking about economic development in the industrial area. Ronnie, hello, how are you, sir?
Fine, sir, I apologize, but traffic on Southstone Road.
No, we heard it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you heard it.
I apologize, I'm early. And then running. Oh, wait, half of it's true. Great, right.
But again, whether we're talking, however the city goes, we're looking at, community input as being a part of that. We're aware that we're slow to trust. I don't speak for every member of the community, but absolutely aware, but you're not without reason, right? So we want to see, the transparency and the actual, and so I'm a part of that process. So that's me.
At Mayfield, I've been in the Stonecrest area, actually, I first moved here in 1984, was on the western border of West Stonecrest. Now I live in Fly. And my primary interest in being here is really a twofold. One is that maybe an A1 and A2. Is that I'm very passionate about economic development. I worked for AT&T for about 18 years. Left there and went into consulting and did primary business planning and business development planning and economic development. So it's a very passionate thing for me, and I really want to see Stonecrest build its economic base first. I like all of the retail opportunities that I've seen on Facebook, Baby Joe's and etc. But there's some fundamentals that I'd like to see, which is why I'm very excited to be a part of this effort, to at least have that voice to the conversation. The second piece of it is education, which to me is so closely related to economic development. And so improving the performance of our schools is very, very important to me, both in terms of the success that we hope for our children, but as it relates to economic development, certainly be a magnet for young up-and-coming professionals who would want to choose Stonecrest to move here, to have their children go to school here because the schools are so great. So that's kind of where my space is, and
All right, Sylvia Jackson. I am with the Side Cab Development Authority, as you know, that is the economic development arm of the county. I'm primarily here for two reasons. One, to make sure there is economic development support for you and this committee. On behalf of our president, Doreen McGar, which I think you've met.
Yeah.
And Randy Mason, who is our VP of Economic Development. So I represent them. I want to make sure that we provide you with that support, whatever this committee needs in terms of education, as you said. We do those across the county and with our commissioners and CEO. And we love making sure we have partnerships with all of our cities. The second reason I'm here is representing our film commission, our entertainment commission, just 10 organizations, some of them nonprofits. Georgia Piedmont Technical College is on there, along with Georgia State. And then we have partnerships with numerous institutions and organizations across the country. So we can bring those partnerships to bear in case you need those connections. And so to give you a little history on the entertainment office, we manage film permitting in the unincorporated areas, but we also do Tucker. We do Stonecrest until we have you guys up and running. And you feel comfortable doing your own page work, you want to continue to do that. We work with Lithonia, Brookhaven, all of the others, whether they're on the online platform or if they do it themselves. So we're excited to be a part of this. We want to continue to build this partnership and strong relationship with you guys and make sure you're successful at whatever your vision is for the city.
Stop me if I go over.
Hi, Bernie.
I'm Bernie Knight. I am the elected chairman of the board and general counsel of Stonecrest Industrial Council Incorporated, which is a 501c6 nonprofit, which is serving the stakeholders and the city of Stonecrest in the Stonecrest Lithonia Planned Industrial District, which was a district that was denoted and created by the county some 60 years ago. I'm also a member of the board and of directors and past chairman of the Stonecrest Business Alliance, which is another 501c6. Jetha is also on it, of course, which is dedicated to promoting the business interests within the Stonecrest Overlay District, more specifically the Stonecrest Regional Center, the focus of the LCI plan that was adopted in 2013. Local counsel for Heidelberg Materials, which is the quarry that we have here at Stonecrest, and do a number of other things. I guess I'm officially named the founder of the city. I was public hearing, sir.
You're kind of infamous, so.
I might have chosen a different word, but notorious. But my interest is, first of all, to see the LCI plan for the Stonecrest Regional Center implemented. The Business Alliance has been working on it for a number of years. We've had some success in moving certain aspects of it forward. The entire reason for it was to try to attract federal dollars to promote, to enhance infrastructure and design within that area. That has not yet happened. We would very much like to see that happen. Another interest that we have is to promote the Arabian Mountain National Heritage Area. And more particularly recreational tourism, which will preserve the integrity of the heritage area. Most folks don't realize the heritage area is not just Arabian Mountain. It's not just the monastery. It extends north of I-20 and includes well over half of the planned industrial district. We would like to see that recreational opportunities up there enhanced. Another interest, of course, is to establish a community improvement district, CID, for the Stonecrest Lithonia Planned Industrial District. It is authorized by the city charter. It's already built in, and we've been working on it for some time. We have quite a few property owners signed up already, and we hope to move forward with it in the near future. So there are some other things too, but I'll stick with those for the time being.
All right.
It's a little unusual, but given that Marie is always at these meetings, and I think daylight alternates, it might not be bad to let them introduce themselves if that's acceptable.
If you take 30 seconds to do that.
30 seconds.
Yeah.
Yeah, 5 minutes.
Yeah.
My name is Marie Colson, and I'm a resident and a business industrial owner of property, which I'm very interested in developing. I'm also interested in the CID, but to involve the whole Stonecrest, south of I-20, all of I-20. And I'm looking for help in the industrial business district.
Call text email.
Thank you.
Good evening, I'm Dayle Lohman, also resident of Stonecrest. Oh goodness, originally a member of the Governor's Commission Economic Development Subcommittee when the city was being founded. Founding president of the Stonecrest Citizens Coalition, immediate past chair of the DeKalb County Board of Elections, as well as a current candidate for mayor. It's nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. I should follow up. I'm an insomniac and a workaholic. I love what I do and I don't apologize for it. My family knows that. So when I say call, text, email, I started my career on the private development side. I worked for Turner Construction, Gilbane and Kiewit. early in my career, managed over $15 billion worth of construction projects. All over the Southwest. The farthest east I went was actually my first big project, which ironically was the Kansas Speedway. I drove 2,000 or 1,000 miles to the west only to go right back home. So I'm from Kansas originally. So worked on projects all over the world actually. So if you call, text, or email me, chances are I'll be in touch with you within an hour. It's not unusual for me to get a text at 2 o'clock in the morning and be on the phone a few minutes later. So don't hesitate. If you have a great idea, hey, the middle of the night's a great time to talk. So yeah, just don't hesitate to do that because I'm around. I'm here. I'm a public servant. I'm here to serve you.
Thank you. In the interest of time,
Yeah.
so that we won't keep our consulting waiting, and so that we can get as much information as we possibly can out of this session.
It's the most quiet I've ever seen, Lynn.
I would like to now introduce to our audience, to our committee. Lynn, I don't have your last name. Peter.
Patterson.
Okay. And the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you very much. The timing was perfect. My dog was just barking at another dog, so perhaps it was good you went through all your introductions. Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for attending, and I'm glad we have this opportunity to talk through the draft plan as it's been developed. We've got a couple of tweaks on it, but I did want to get it in your hands so that you could look at it. I wanted Christian, and welcome Christian. We've spoken already at length and will continue to do so. I, like Christian, and am not planning on going anywhere. Our team is very engaged with our communities for ongoing advice. Thoughts. Can you clarify this? What did you mean by that? How can you help? That's what we're here for. So I want to make sure we're not a one and done. Here's the plan. See you later. Good luck with it. That's not who we are. And so I'm delighted, and I will tell you one of the best parts, and Christian mentioned it at the outset. Can you all hear me okay? Everything's good? Okay. Is the community involvement here? We were only able to hold one public meeting, given some constraints, and it was very well attended. For those of you who were there, Andrew, I know you were there, Dave, Bernie. And I don't know who else is in the room that might have been there, but it was, I don't know, did we have about 80 people, Ashley? Is that what we thought it was?
Yeah.
Maybe about 80. So that was fantastic. We got a lot of good feedback on that. So what I'd like to do tonight is I'd like to just walk through some highlights, really focusing on the recommendations. There's a whole lot of information that's out there that I've sent it out. You all can look through it at your leisure. And if there are errors in there, please, we'd like to know. We thought we have good data. But I would like to hit the highlights, give the recommendations, because that's what this plan really is what's the path forward? And that is the name of the plan, Path Forward. We all know about the history. We've talked about the trust factor. I talk with developers and brokers.
Sorry to interrupt.
Yep.
So sorry.
That's okay.
You mentioned that the plan was
In our hands,
In our-
but none of us. have
Oh,
seen it.
I apologize. I sent it. You probably didn't get it yet. My apologies. So that was an assumption. I sent it out this afternoon. I apologize. I didn't know if it was forwarded on to you. But we'll get that to you.
Get it to you.
So that's okay. Oh, well, I have the plan here. If I may, can I share my screen? Is everybody okay with that?
Yes.
Sure.
Okay.
It's not having it means we will not be multitasking.
What's that? None of us will be multitasking, right? All right. Let's see. Make sure that I'm after all this time, you'd think I'd be much better at this than I actually am. I'm screen sharing. What are we looking at?
Path forward.
Path Forward City of Stonecrest.
Are we looking at the whole screen? Because I can't tell. Or are you
Nope.
looking at like the
We are
I
seeing,
can see your slides. Yeah, now it's.
there we go. Whoops. Now you can see them?
Yep.
Yep.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, so we've entitled it Path Forward. As I was saying, because, I mean, it would be silly to pretend that we don't know the history. And that is something, as I mentioned, I talk to developers, I talk to brokers, talk to property owners, to businesses all of the time. And the comment is, oh, Stonecrest, and what do they know about Stonecrest? And it hasn't been a pretty history. But I think you're well on your way to redeveloping, rebranding, creating a new identity for yourself. And I think this is one of the main things that you can do. And so we'll touch on that, and we'll talk about the importance of the trust that Christian and you all have mentioned before, and the transparency, and making sure that it's a shared vision. So I'm going to kind of skip through a few things because I don't think they're all that necessary at the moment. One of the things that I will say in understanding Stonecrest and where we're trying to go, and the reason we use the term path forward is you need to build the infrastructure. At the end of the day, the infrastructure, the organizational infrastructure, economic development, capacity building, I don't care what you call it. You need to build the pathway upon which you're going to move, right? So you might start out with dirt, then you make gravel, then you hardtop it, and off you go. Same idea is that you have to learn to crawl before you can walk, before you can run. And I have this slide up because it feels very much like Stonecrest came running out of the gate before they were ready to do that. And so what we had found is almost like hit the brakes, need to take an assessment of what you've got, putting that together, and then you can start to move readily along that path. So, it's part of the history, part of who you are. You had a couple of false starts, if you will. And what we think is very important is how do you take that energy, that excitement, but turn it into very meaningful, constructive, efficient, effective economic development practice. So obviously we're going to talk about the path intent, and the approach.
One thing about that first slide, the
Yep.
tax abatements actually started as soon as the MOU was signed.
I'm sorry, the what started? The tax abatement started, right.
Yes.
And which is something that we all need to talk about, and Christian needs to talk about. The construction was supposed to start in 2022 and have some substantial completion, and we don't have that, right?
Yep, let me
So
ask
we'll-
you questions until the end so that you can get through. So write your questions down so that we can get the
Okay.
full presentation and then we can ask questions. Go ahead.
Thanks. That's okay.
Yeah.
So really what we see is, the city does, and I'll say it time and time again, a strong foundation and dedicated direction. Talking with a lot of people, which is really what I would like to get to, is the community and stakeholder engagement piece. We had our public meeting. We held small group sessions and individual sessions. We had a survey that we tried desperately to push out. I think, Christian, how sexy is economic development for a survey? Depends on who you ask, right? We really did try as best we could to get it out. We just didn't get a lot of responses, but the responses, it's not supposed to be a representative sample. It's supposed to add in how we perceive it. The survey responses add to the data points that we have. What we did find, and I believe, and I think you mentioned it already, is that economic development is a community effort. Just seeing all of you around the table, you come from very different backgrounds, very different interests. And I know I said this at the meeting, so my apologies if you were at the meeting, and I'll say it again to the rest of you, is that you're all ambassadors, whether you serve on a committee, whether you're working at a restaurant, whether you're working the front desk at a hotel, whether you're a small business, whether you're with industry. Site selectors, developers, they have their ears to the ground and they're listening to what people have to say. And so the more that we can create economic development as a community effort, Christian and Ashley cannot do it all. They just can't. And we'll talk about the different organizations and stakeholders in their roles in helping to put forward the plan. So that's very important. I think can I admit her since I'm right here? All right. Hi, Gia, she's here. I think what was critical were the outcomes from the stakeholder engagement. We sort of found 5 things. Some of them fall under the purview of economic development, and some of them are they're important to economic development, but we don't have a whole lot of ways to address that. That falls under city administration, city governments. And that first one is certainly good governance and transparency. And when you sit in a room full of residents, you're going to hear a lot of things. Some of that have to do with economic development as we see it, sort of more traditional economic development or community development, and some of them don't. But good governance and transparency, it is absolutely critical. And it comes for economic development, it comes down to trust, but it also comes down to processes. And that's something we paid a lot of attention to. We heard about how long does it take to get a business license? What do the development processes look for? Again, talking to developers, you don't want them, time is money for them. And if they think that a project is going to get held up, if it's going to be challenged, if the zoning isn't there, if the plans aren't there to support it, they're going to walk along and find somebody else who can. So I think that confidence in local government, in the operations, are really, really critical. The second, available inventory. You know, there's everything from what businesses do we have to what properties. And Ashley, I know, worked very hard from the time we had this meeting to very recently with the inventory, trying to inventory properties. So it's nice that as we're doing a project, and these things take time, some of these things that we would have automatically said back in, April, oh, you need inventory, and you still need to update it, and we'll put that. You've already started those initiatives. So that's fantastic. And those things you want to continue to do. We heard a lot about the municipal and community disconnect. Again, a little bit different than the good governance and transparency, but there were a lot of discussions about services. And those services came from residents, and those comments also came from businesses. I mean, when we talk about code enforcement or aesthetics, those pieces are really critical. Who's supposed to be doing X, Y, and Z, making sure that the community understands this is a city or this is a county issue, this is a state issue, if it's a state highway, and having all of that working in tandem. So Christian can pick up the phone and call the right person and know, or Gia can do it, and that gets addressed instead of having to look at weeds or having, we'll talk about crime in a minute, public safety, but who's responsible? And so that I think is a little bit confusing. It was also, we found really interesting that not everybody knows that they're in the city of Stonecrest. And so how many business owners do you have, businesses that are operating, that don't have a business license in the city of Stonecrest? So one of our recommendations, and I've been talking to Ashley and about it previously, and I think Christian, we may have talked about it, was getting a hold of the county business license information and cross-referencing it from addressing, geolocating it, and figuring out which of those have a DeKalb business license but should have a Stonecrest, because that'll make all the difference in the world. City identity and rebranding, that is something that goes along with the good governance, its reputation. It's a very young city. It hasn't had a lot of time for identity. I mean, if you ask most people that don't live in Stonecrest, I don't. What do you know about Stonecrest? What do we say? The mall. That's all we know. It wasn't until actually I really started looking at Stonecrest, and I live in DeKalb, that I found out, oh, Arabian Mountain's part of that. I didn't know that. And I think that although I knew about Arabian Mountain, I didn't know its connection to Stonecrest. So, I think being able to have identity and rebranding and being able to put signage up, we'll talk about that, is going to be really critical. Whoops, I'm sorry, I keep having to move my little self here. And then public safety perceptions. We call it perceptions because sometimes it's someone's perception and sometimes it's some reality. But that certainly is a perception of crime, of safety, the broken windows theory that folks are concerned about, where an area is unkempt or an area appears to be crime-ridden. Whether or not that's true can have an impact on property values, can have an impact on being able to attract businesses. So I think that is going to be a lot of interdepartmental work and some leadership that's happening, and not top down always, but even just departments talking with each other and sharing information. So that's going to be critical. It was really a great session. I mean, we have pages and pages and pages of notes. We did put in the plan, you'll see, we've got all sorts of documents, and for this purpose here, we've got the links, but we'll actually provide these to the city, and then they can put in a link that's a lot more, that'll be more acceptable than a Dropbox on our end. So we had a survey, we had stakeholder meetings, and we again added those data points. I don't want to spend a lot of time on this. You all know it pretty much about who you are. Obviously, one of your greatest assets is your location, and Stonecrest being along I-20 on both sides, having the Mountain National Heritage Area and the Nature Preserve, the archive, the rescue center, the industrial components. You already have a lot of things going on. I think it's really kind of shaping it up and filling in those gaps. There's a lot of development that can still happen in the area, and it's just placing it in the right locations. But that interstate is really critical because it does connect you all the way into Atlanta. You know, is it 15 miles from downtown Atlanta. You can get there pretty quickly. Depends on time of day. Christian doesn't know that yet, but depends on what time of day you're trying to go. So there's a lot of really nice opportunities where you're located. It is a lovely suburb. It is an absolutely lovely suburb, and I think that that's something that you want to be able to develop an identity for that suburb, a really quality suburb that includes industry, that includes commercial opportunities, that includes retail opportunities, and a sense of place. Transportation, of course, we're in economic development, we're always looking at it. One of the most exciting piece, I think, given your location, given your current population, is indeed this the new MARTA Stonecrest Transit Hub. I think that's very, very exciting for you all. That creates an opportunity for some transit-oriented design, some density, some activity around a location that is not going to be just auto-dependent. And I know, Bernie, we've talked about, you know, the trail, and it comes down further in the plan, but really looking at that as almost like the midpoint, and where that gets located and around the mall, but creating an opportunity for people to come and then look at some alternative modes of transportation, whether it's bike, whether it's walking, whether it's driving, or other buses. So the population, I don't know how many of these data are interesting to you, but one of the nicest things that we see is that you have a nice healthy population and a nice young age, about 33 years old. Good median household income at $57,000. Given the cost of living in general out in Stonecrest, it's pretty reasonable. We'll talk about, we do have some housing burdens out there. But it's a good base population to be able to work from. You also have about 29% have bachelor degrees or higher, and only 8% have less than a high school diploma of those of that age that could have attained all of that. Again, what I want to do, instead of going through the numbers themselves, you know, these are kind of the highlights. It is the population, or Stonecrest has been recognized as one of the wealthiest majority African American cities in Georgia, and certainly across the United States. There are some real opportunities to leverage that identity and to say, this is who we are. We're very proud of it, and we want to support our community. We have almost 65% have at least some college or greater in terms of educational attainment, which is, again, wonderful opportunity. The piece that is most concerning to me, and I'm going to skip ahead because I want to show you something. Let me get, I got it. It's way down here in labor profile. You see that bold piece right there? Only 5% of Stonecrest residents live and work within Stonecrest. Everyone else is leaving and other people are coming in. Now, we like this exchange, right? Because that's new money coming into the community, new people using the restaurants. It gives a lot, there presents some opportunity. We don't want to live in an island, an isolated community, but that's a very, very small number. And that has to do partially with that educational attainment and the kinds of work that occurs in and around Stonecrest. So sorry, I'm flipping back and forth, but I think it was really very, very interesting when we looked at, all right, so you have this great demographic, and guess what? Everybody's leaving to go to work, pretty much. Education, I know you mentioned education earlier. I don't know if I can't remember. Was it you, Andrew, who mentioned education, or I didn't catch the first name of Mr. Mayfield?
That,
Sorry. You know, you've got great schools. In fact, the Arabian Mountain High School is something from an economic development perspective to really highlight as something very unique and something that can be leveraged when it comes to business attraction. And that your High School Academy of Engineering and Environmental Studies is and located along the Arabian Mountain Path is really quite extraordinary. The environment as integrating context for learning, the EIC curriculum. So that's wonderful. Plus you've got, you know, your other high schools that are in the area and all of your elementary and middle schools. And DeKalb, of course, has a new superintendent, right? So we'll see what the opportunities are there. We didn't just look at the Georgia Technical College, Piedmont Technical College, because we knew you're in Metro Atlanta. When Christian is going out and it's kind of exciting for him, I'm hoping that some of this background really helps him to understand the community. You have so many higher education institutions around the area, and you can draw from that, and it's establishing those relationships indirectly and directly. I was actually talking to another community the other day, and one of their employees is a graduate from a university that's probably about 40 miles away, and he's trying to establish just relationships to try to get that kind of flow and be able to introduce the community to that university. And so there's plenty to choose from here. Certainly some are closer than others. There are a lot of opportunities, especially when we talk a little bit later about Black entrepreneurialism, and Spelman has been a leader in that area. So Georgia Piedmont Technical College, of course, and I know Bernie, you and I have had long conversations about the new Regional Transportation Training Center, which is very exciting. You know, that's $5.8 million. And plus not just the transportation piece of it, but the fact that they have a presence in Stonecrest, but they also have all of these other programs of studies, not necessarily in Stonecrest, but things that can be offered and ways to create these partnerships. We looked at housing, of course, because housing is on a lot of people's minds these days. We can look at the new median list home price. In June, it was $289,000, almost $290,000 when I first pulled these data, and go back and look. And now I think it's probably still about the same. I looked quickly today. There's a couple more that are in the low 200s, but then I've got some that are quite higher. And of course, all of these houses move very quickly. The critical piece of this, and I want you to see that, is $289,900 is the median home price. The whole median home sold price was $260,000, right? Median gross rent in 2021 was $1,226. Currently, available rental units, whether they're in older or newer, depending, range from $1,000 a month. And we didn't, you know, in this case, I didn't divide it down by in these numbers by 1 bedroom studios, 1 bedroom, 2 bedrooms, 3 bedrooms, but you're looking at anywhere from $1,000 to $2,500 per month. When you have $57,000 as your average or your median income, sorry, trying to move me here. That leaves you affordable housing. You can afford about $1,430 per month in housing costs. So that's rent and utilities, or a $195,000 mortgage. We just said if the median sales price is over $289,000, that means you've got to have a $90,000 down payment, which is probably unlikely for somebody new. And your $1,430, if you've tried to be at 30% if you've lived in a house for a long time, you're probably okay with 30% of your median income going towards housing. If you're having to drive, like we said, 95% of the population is leaving the city to go to their jobs. You're now looking at 58% of household income is being utilized for housing and transportation costs. We have an affordability crisis in this country, in the state, and even in your own community. The numbers are just not panning out. And what you were talking about earlier, when we look at the desire for some of, I heard you talking about Trader Joe's and Fresh Market and some of the other things that everyone would like to have. You can't be house burdened and really looking at those kinds of necessarily as some of the services you want to bring into the community. So we need to think about how to create increases in density. Obviously, we always want to try to raise median income by the kinds of jobs that we're trying to attract. There are going to be jobs. We know that retail jobs don't pay as well as professional service jobs, as healthcare jobs, as even manufacturing jobs, but we want those, we also want those services available. Need to understand that those folks have to live someplace too, right? So making sure that we have workforce housing across the board, that's going to be very important. Just again, I really want to get to the other area. We talked about the history of the different development areas, Stonecrest Mall area. Obviously, we mentioned the natural assets and what the opportunities are with that. 29% of your adult population is not in the labor force, which is a pretty significant number. You were at about almost an 8% unemployment rate when we checked the numbers back in June. I'll check those again, but I think it's probably pretty stayed in terms of where we are. We look at in these easy to look at in terms of these numbers, but we look at location quotients to understand, well, how do you match? How does Stonecrest in terms of the labor pool and the kinds of jobs that you have in the area, how do those match up against Metro Atlanta or even Georgia? And you can see relative to Metro Atlanta, fewer in construction and manufacturing, fire insurance, real estate, and professional services. So we don't have that. Again, we're looking at what the median income is. Those are higher paid wage jobs, about $57,000. So those folks are going somewhere else to work. And I'll show you that again in the labor profile. I mentioned earlier about the business licenses. One of the concerns is getting that cleaned up. Who's in Stonecrest and who's not as well. And it doesn't fall in your department, Christian, but it's going to be important to understand really, are they being correctly categorized? Because some of them are missing categorizations. There's about 836 businesses. Is that the true number in Stonecrest? And if so, we've got a whole bunch of them that are not categorized. And so it's a little hard with some of the information. These are coming right from the city. Make sure we know what's happening. But it's nice because it's live data, right? Census data you have to wait for a long time. But these business license data are helpful. When we were doing our conversations in our public meeting and in individual conversations, I talked a lot about collaboration and thinking regionally. That even though you do have a jurisdictional boundary, that's not where people live, work, shop. They go back and forth, right? It means nothing to them. It means everything to the local governments, but it doesn't mean anything to your daily urban pattern. You might go through, especially in Georgia, a bunch of different counties or a bunch of different cities and not even necessarily recognize where you are. That can be a detriment when it comes to sales tax revenue, but it also can be it's very advantageous when we start to look at regional economic activity and say, what's happening in the region? How can we collaborate across jurisdictions, or at least understand these are projects that are landing in the area? So what it did was I looked at all of the announcements that have been going on basically in the last couple of years. I'll start out with the obviously one for Stonecrest. But when you start to look at where jobs are going, why, these large investments, these large job creations, those are the kinds of things that made us sit back and say, why isn't that happening in Stonecrest, right? That's what I think we're all trying to figure out, to overcome with this plan, to help Christian do his job and Ashley do hers, is what's happening? We've got obviously the Home Depot Center, which is fantastic. It opened in 2021. Rivian is opening down the street in Covington, $5 billion, 7,500 employees. That's just the direct employment. We're not even thinking about some of, and I've been working a lot with communities that have these mega projects that are not too far away, and they're getting the benefit of the supply chain. So they don't have to have the giant plant, right? But they can see who are the suppliers, who are those secondary industries that are supportive of even of the suppliers. What are the opportunities? What's that multiplier that we can be looking at? So we've got Rivian, we've got Pepsi that invested 260 million in Tucker, Archer, 118 million in Covington, SK was up in Covington, over in Covington, 473 million. The bakery, 37 million and 400 jobs. Fiber Visions, Covington, 48 million, 21 new jobs. They don't have to be massive. They don't have to be $500 million investments. But, you know, if you can get 20, 30, 50 new jobs, that's a great start. That's a great way to be kind of thinking without having industry overtake Stonecrest. And there are definitely areas in the land use piece that we see where you've got great industrial land that's ripe for for assemblage, and could really create some of these good manufacturing jobs. So I think that's quite interesting when we looked at, and even those projects that were in 2020, you know, that was the pandemic, but still things were happening. So to me, there's not a reason why Stonecrest can't take advantage of all of this activity. I was just at the Georgia Economic Developers Association meeting again. I think we've slipped from the #1 state to do business to #2, but we're still, there's 48 below us, so that's pretty good. I mentioned about the labor force. I think is very, very interesting that we've got most of the residents in Stonecrest are headed to Fulton County or DeKalb County, and some to Gwinnett. I've got all the maps, they'll be in the appendices. And then the majority of jobs are manufacturing, transportation, retail, and healthcare. And we know, you know, that transportation, the location, historically, it's been important. I don't think that Stonecrest needs to be or should be or become a giant, you know, warehousing location. That's not who you are. It's not who you want to be. But transportation is important, and transportation comes in many different facets. The majority of residents who are employed outside of Stonecrest are retail, healthcare, administration support, waste management, remediation, and healthcare. So I guess I wrote healthcare twice. My apologies. So we're finding that the job opportunities in Stonecrest and the skill levels of Stonecrest are not matching. Otherwise, why would you drive so far away to go to a job when you could just be located much closer? Again, trying to walk through this. Stonecrest is pretty much a bedroom community at the moment, with residents driving an average of 37 minutes to traditional job centers like downtown, Perimeter, and Hartsfield-Jackson. That's what's happening to them. You've all looked through it. Andy and I were talking and said, man, Stonecrest has a lot of previous planning documents. They really do. The comp plan, as you mentioned, the LCI plan. Dave, I think that was it, you or Bernie was talking about the LCI plan. We've got the ULI TAP. We've got the industrial inventory study. That most of these happened before Stonecrest became its own entity, its own jurisdiction. We did look at the film and entertainment strategy. I know there were questions about the freight study. It was not prepared in time for this project, but that's okay, because these are living, breathing documents that are guides. And so when you get the freight study back, you can look at that and look at some of what we've been, we're recommending, and you make adjustments. I don't think that it needs to slow anything down. The comp plan we looked at, what are the things that they looked at in 2019? It's been a while. This, as you go through this, you'll see it's very, very consistent about, mall development, about location accessibilities to major highways and transportation corridors, redevelopment. This was before, obviously, the target. And, looking at the CID, you got the Metro, the East Metro, and then thinking about the CID for the industrial area a little bit further down the line. once you get all these other foundational elements together. Housing, we did look certainly at housing. We've got about an 8% vacancy rate at the moment, but definitely the needs, and we found that too, for a variety of housing types. It's not just about single family houses. It's not just about apartments. It's not just about townhomes. It's how do you create this diverse population? And I've been really looking at, secondary units. So accessory dwelling units are a great way for folks to start if we're thinking about, in some cases, single family areas, even if you're looking at even a dense development, having like a little cottage in the back, guest cottage in the back or above a garage is a nice way to bring some additional housing density. The benefit for housing reduces costs for employees, which we'll talk about later, but it also does increase that local market. We looked at the LCI, we looked at the UTAP, ULI and technical assistance panel. And I know that, again, Bernie and I had talked about Trailhead and thinking about with MARTA and the way that how could you really create a nice trail plan that would increase tourism. And Christian, I'm glad to hear about your tourism background. So we walked through some of that. We talked about the industrial inventory study. The good news is that you have an industrial council already. Good work. They wanted to, this was a long time ago they wrote this, a DeKalb Industrial Council. The inventory, which we already talked about, safety and crime, infrastructure. None of these things are new, right? This plan's been around for a long time and none of these things are new, which means we still need to address them. Protecting industrial land through zoning and regulation, but also cleaning up industrial land. Industrial, as you all know, does not have to mean light. It doesn't have to mean something that's, unappealing. It just needs to be focusing on some aesthetic pieces of it. Looked at the transportation plan. I don't want to walk all through these, but again, these are all things that we took into consideration as we put this action plan together. The film and entertainment strategy and the takeaways from that. I thought the most interesting piece, there's lots of interesting pieces of it, and this is going to support the promotion of the creation of place, is there aren't enough dedicated live music venues. And I think one of a lot of the conversations we had was we want Stonecrest to be a place, a destination, a location that people want to come to and stay and spend their money and bring their families to. That certainly can happen. And you provide some music or entertainment along with that. And all of a sudden you've, increased your visitorship. You've created an opportunity for creativity and also the, that industry. So, and there's a lot going on, again, sort of up the street and even in Stonecrest when it comes to some of the film studios. So that's exciting. All right. Da-da-da, the big drum roll. Everybody here, I can't see you. Everybody's okay? Thumbs up. Am I boring you? Have you fallen asleep? No, we're good? Okay, a lot of background stuff. So what are our recommendations? Well, we have five general large recommendations, and then there'll be they're all they can't think of the word. They distill down into much finer granular detail. And those are organizational infrastructure, that economic development capacity building, but it's not just economic development capacity, there's some other pieces. Under that are roles and responsibilities, processes and tools, inventories and incentives. And I will say, we did, as we were developing this plan, we had that list, y'all had a whole salad full of requests for this project. As we got into it, the more we got into it, we had to redirect so much of the effort into this organizational infrastructure. It's absolutely critical. Second was marketing. Third was land development. Fourth, targeted economic sectors and industries. And then fifth was workforce infrastructure. And so I'll kind of walk through those generally at the moment. This is very small because this is not really meant for presentation. This is actually more the document. I've got to send it off to our graphics folks, but here's economic development at the center of the universe, as it well should be. as always. You've got the city council that supports economic development through policies, right? Through funding, through all the things that they need to do. And there are if probably a true representation would be, there'll be all sorts of lines in between, you know, the city council also has a connection with the development authority because I know they just had their IGA approved and they're, you know, they've got funding and there's some others, but let's just put economic development at the center of the universe for the moment. City managers are very important because the city manager is your boss, right? And making sure that you have all the support that you need and all the coordination that you need also with city departments. Probably the key departments are the building department, finance, code enforcement, and planning and zoning. It's not to say that you don't have other interactions with other departments, certainly police, but those are, I would say, probably the four most important ones. Then obviously the role of the development authority. So for us, it was, okay, whose role is what? Who's going to take on these responsibilities? And how do you all work and interact together? And you know, Christian's going to be wearing a lot of hats. He's got to do a lot of coordination. He's out talking with, you know, developers and businesses, small businesses, large businesses. Ashley's out there talking to folks about retention and expansion. You've got a lot of things going on, but you also have to, you're a facilitator, right? So you're making sure that code enforcement is cleaning this you know, one area up and making sure that it looks good so we don't have that broken window syndrome. Or when I was a site selector, we would always go at the end of the meeting or at the end of our tour and we would drive around without the economic developer because we wanted to see what else was there. You know, what aren't they showing us? And so it is really important that the entire community, just as much as your ambassadors, the way it's presented, not just for outside people, for inside people as well. So you've got your staffing, you know, you've got 2 positions and we think at the moment that's sufficient. And getting those roles and responsibilities down, there's an opportunity and, you know, I'm glad Decide to Cab's at the table because they are probably one of your greatest assets. They do what you do on a much larger scale and they're there to support you. And leaning on them, leaning on the DeKalb Chamber are going to be really critical and take some of the workload off of the staff in the city. I think it's just important to know what you know, what are you trying to accomplish? Don't bite off more than you can chew. We could have made this a 200, you know, page document with every little nitty gritty detail, but the reality is that's too much. We wanted to focus this plan on what are the critical elements that you need to address to get moving, that, you know, good economic development folks know what they're doing, but what are the key strategies and the key practices to undertake? And as part of the overall community engagement and stakeholder engagement and empowerment that the community understands at large what this is intended to do. So we did talk a little bit about, you know, what each of the departments are doing and how the you know, the regular economic development meetings need to happen between planning and zoning and finance and building department to make sure that everybody's moving along efficiently. It's not siloed, you know, again, going back even from the business, we looked at the business license process and the internal document wasn't even all that clear, but I think they were trying to, no offense, but that they were trying to do to see who intervenes at what point, you know, whose approval do we need at what point. But you really need to have something that's even going to go out into the public so that you know when you put a business license in somebody, where does that go? How do I follow it through? It's as simple as doing that for small businesses. It's going to be as simple as doing that, or not quite as simple for much larger endeavors. And that can be for planning, making sure that the project is going to fit zoning regulations. And if it doesn't, what's it going to take? What's the likelihood that it's going to be, if there's a variance that's required, that it's going to be approved? Just making sure that you're checking in. And I know we talked about that as well the other day. The Development Authority, which has been the elephant in the room. I speak candidly. I guess they weren't in the room for quite a while, but they've been reconstituted with a new IGA. It is it is wonderful to have a development authority to be able to carry out the development opportunities. I know there are new members. I know that there's a lot of oversight going in on this time, and I think that's fantastic. And what they can do, and then what the executive director, I believe that's you, Christian, right?
So it is.
Yep, it is. That's another one of your hats. That's why you don't sleep. And being able to really kind of think through how to utilize this tool, this development authority, to be able to develop the way that you all want to. Some great opportunity. And, went through, these are their roles, these are their responsibilities, knowing what they have to do. The executive director, and then our recommendations. I'm going to be honest, as you share this, it is not just the mandatory training, but I would encourage the development authority members to keep going, keep going, keep going. There are so many training opportunities here in Georgia. There's advanced training, there's the GEDA, they have sidebar conferences, they have monthly meetings. I go to them often, and I see development authority members going. It does not just the economic development professionals, the Georgia Municipal Association, GMA, and they have development authority trainings. And even I was at the Georgia Economic Development course, basic economic development course, a couple of weeks ago as a guest, and it's nice to see those folks there. There's such power associated with the development authority that it can be, as I mentioned, a very, very useful tool, but it's making sure that everybody knows what opportunities they have and what opportunities they don't have with it. So I think it's a great asset to have. I'm glad that they're back, and just making sure that that the oversight is there and the training is there. But it's not all. We have obviously some other organizations that are critical and have a role and responsibility to economic development. We've got Decide DeKalb, which I mentioned, very powerful ally and partner for the city. They have so many resources, far more than Stonecrest or frankly, any of the municipalities will have. They have a long-standing relationship. There have been, obviously I know that this area has felt neglected at times, and that's okay, but now you have a voice. And they're ready and willing. We did the interview with you all with Decide DeKalb too, and I think they were very excited about what can happen. And so I think that's a real opportunity. The Chamber of Commerce. I know that there's a Stonecrest chamber. There's also the DeKalb chamber. They reach a lot of people, and they have a lot of programs that are very well developed. They're two very different organizations between those two chambers of commerce, and ensuring that we're at the table with the DeKalb chamber as well. Georgia Power and their economic development arm provide great research data, spectacular research data if you're looking for market information. They've got integrated property inventory tools, engineering, recruitment, all sorts of assistance. Christian, some of this is directed to you, but I'm going to recommend that one of the first things that you do is go down and meet with Georgia Power in Midtown, because they're going to be a wonderful resource for you. And then the East Metro CID is currently the only active improvement district in Stonecrest, and they have their ability. They provide some opportunity as well, making sure the recommendation is to meet regularly with these organizations and taking that inventory that you all have and sharing it and regularly updating it with Georgia Power, because that's what gets out. As we start to really look into these larger projects and wanting to get on the state's list, you've got to have that inventory ready to go with information so that it can be pulled from Georgia Power. Talked a little bit about the CID, the one that currently exists in 2014. There's a CID advisory committee. To my knowledge, it still exists. Is that true? Does it still exist?
Yes.
Yeah. And I know that there were questions very early on. We went back and forth about expanding the scope of our work. It was not approved to be able to investigate the CID that you all were discussing earlier. We do think it's a valuable tool for redevelopment. I think at this juncture, right now, in the next couple of years, you're not ready for that. It does take time to put those things together, getting proper, I heard someone was there, interested property owner, in the CID. And I think that's something that can be in the background. It wouldn't be, it's not our initial recommendation to go and develop that. I think there's some planning. And I think that that does deserve to have dedicated, a dedicated investigation into the feasibility of it, finding the property, making sure to get enough of the property owners, knowing what you're going to be do with those, and having that vision. So even if it's an industrial plan, about what happens in that area, a much more granular level than what we're doing here at this sort of 30,000 foot level. So we have that. And then we've got the Stonecrest Business Alliance and the Chamber. And I know we've got some representation. Wonderful to have them. Absolutely wonderful. And they have a finger on the pulse of local businesses that are here, having regular meetings. That's that part of that accessibility and transparency, making sure that you've got these resources, and having some quarterly roundtables again with these organizations, I think would be great to have. I think when I looked at their website a week or so ago, was fine-tuning this, I think one has about 65 members and one has about 35 members. I don't know how many, I might be wrong, but that's on their website. That's how many they showed. And, so that's a good 100 businesses. And there's opportunities for certainly for them to partner and get the word out as needed and help get the word back in. So it's great. So processing tools, I mentioned that. I think the development process mapping piece, so that you have clarity when a business or a developer comes in. Again, they all want certainty, so they want to know what they have an internal process. I mentioned about the business plan, but we need to have one, or the business approval process, but we need to have those to hand out. If somebody walks in, they need to know how long is it going to take, where does it go, and who's going to be shepherding that. That also happens with development. I get called all the time, how do I develop in this community? And you got to call and you've got to figure out what the timelines are. The more information that's upfront is much more helpful for someone, whether they're going to be doing a small development or a large development. We've already talked about the commercial industrial property, making sure that needs to stay up to date, reach out to not just, I think there were some secondary data sources, but reaching out directly to brokers and property owners and letting them know it's an opportunity for them to market their property, coordinate with Georgia Power, publish that inventory on the city's website. As a former site selector, first place I would go is on the community's website, and the more developed it was, the better off it would be. And then I'm going to talk about this a little bit more in a bit, but this Entrepreneurship Resource Center, having a small business development library, if you will, a repository for someone I want to start a business, I want to expand my business, all of those pieces. You don't have to be the small business expert. There's plenty of them around, but it's being able to point them in the right direction. So a toolkit, if you will. And economic development incentives, our team had a long discussion about this. They can be very, very important. You have the Stonecrest Development Authority that can help with property acquisition. They can help with, bond deals. I think that at this point, a large project, work with the side to cab on financial incentives. I'd be very cautious until you get everybody up and running, and really looking at developments that have major impact to be rushing off with development incentives. You have a lot of development incentives, in my mind, are supposed to be, they really should be required to level the playing field. You don't need to give the store away. You've got great land, you've got great location. And so, what are the needs of the project? What do they really need? You don't want to offer something that's not helpful to them. And so really understanding, is it a time issue? So making sure that we can, that you've got a way to expedite permitting, we'll talk about. Is there a way to maybe waive a permit fee? It's small, but maybe that's something that could be helpful. And then workforce initiatives, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. Use your partners. I think that probably if we were to rename this, would be, path forward with partnerships. because there's so many organizations that can help you do, and you don't have to do it again and again and again. It'll help keep all of your sanity, if you're able to leverage those partnerships. Marketing was that second piece. So we kind of had what the roles and responsibilities were. We had the tools, the processes that we're trying to get into place. So it's a much more efficient and transparent local government and economic development initiative. We've got the common vision. So even after all of the conversations we had, the mayor said, I still don't think the city knows who they want to be. The comprehensive plan's vision was community, commerce, and culture working together as a world-class city. Okay. That's good for a comprehensive plan. You know, if we're thinking about Stonecrest as a resilient and approachable city where entrepreneurialism is nurtured, diversity of people, cultures, and environments are celebrated, you've got those great natural assets, so don't forget about those. And economic activity contributes to a high quality of life for local businesses, workforce, and residents. That's what we got out of it. That's what we saw a vision statement really should be. You know, who do you want to be? You want to be a community that is able to withstand pressures, economic pressures, political pressures, what have you, COVID pressures, and someplace where people want to be. And I think for Stonecrest, it's developing it in its entirety. It's not just saying, let's just develop, you know, we want some land, one big project and off we go. We really want to create that opportunity for community, for identity. Talk about that in a minute. Reputation and rebranding. So that was the common theme from the stakeholder input. I am not a reputation and rebranding expert. I'm sorry, we don't have any of those on our team. But I think that comes with time, that comes with consistency. I don't think you can just, you know, say we're all good now. I think it just comes with you know, just having a steady hand. And that will help overcome that and allow you to reestablish the trust. And part of that comes with communication. It is absolutely critical that the communication lines are open and that, you know, with the exception when you've got an NDA or you're worried about a project because, you know, all of a sudden somebody's going to think, well, this person has deep pockets and, you know, property values go up because somebody's talking about a project they shouldn't be talking about. Let people know who are the new businesses. They should be celebrated. Utilize that business alliance. Utilize the chambers of commerce, both your local and your DeKalb Chamber of Commerce. Put together, you know, a newsletter that's sending out information. The more even small successes that you can have, and they build and they build and they build, will help reestablish who you are and who you want to be. So that goes for the local community, but it also should be to the state. And so when they have site selectors that come in or developers that you want to come in and maybe do a mixed use project, you've got marketing materials. Here's the available inventory. Here are the programs ready to go that you're, you know, again, these are the sort of even the foundational pieces that we're putting together. The quarterly newsletters that I mentioned, apprising the businesses and residents. The businesses need to know too, what else is going in, what else is going on of economic development activities, new businesses, regulations, resources, you know. Hey, sometimes you want to put a thing about signage. By the way, businesses, you can only have one sign or whatever, or if you want to put a sign in, make sure you contact our planning and zoning department. Something just to keep the lines open. I think it's, we mentioned it, but some of these things fall under different categories, but that rebranding and that trust needs to happen at the state level too, and in the regional economic development organizations. So having these constant conversations, sharing information, look what we're doing. We put together a plan. We've revamped our, even it can be something as simple as, hey, we've developed this brochure or we've developed this process. What do you think about it? To one of the partner organizations to just get there. It's not that, I mean, you're very interested in their feedback, but it also lets them know how hard you're working on these things. Inventory, vision, sharing is caring. In this, the more you can do, the more people will be interested in what's happening in Stonecrest, and the more positive press you'll get out of it. We think once you start to get these things in place and you feel comfortable, provide development tours to prospective housing, mixed use, commercial, industrial developers. You know, get them on a bus. You can work with Decide to Cab to get folks out to Stonecrest. You can work with the state. You can work with brokers. And when we start looking at that town center idea, you know, having some drawings together, getting those materials, and have a broker or developer day. Have people come out and, you know, celebrate them. I'm sure I'm not telling Christian anything he doesn't know, he doesn't already do. That also helps to instill confidence and help people understand who Stonecrest is and where they're located. Update that website. You want to have searchable inventory, opportunities, resources, announcements, targeted sectors, who you are, what you're looking for. The more information that's out there is going to be really critical. Again, going back to incentives, some communities will list, here are all of our incentives. That's not really how it works. I don't think that that's really necessary. I think that you can say, you know, we work on a project by project basis. It will be good to have some standards. But if you're working with Decide to Cab, you know, you all can decide that that's a policy decision that that I would be talking with the council about, and that's part of the development authority conversations as well. Okay, land use, we had a couple of pieces. This one's a little hard to see, and I apologize. We're working on the formatting with it, especially on a presentation. You know, where are we trying to, we've got to stay out of our overlay district. We're looking at dense residential development in some areas. That helps with the variety of housing types. It does help with being able to support that market. We're looking at industrial areas and really, where do those go? How do you have some light industrial? And I'll talk about that in a minute, to take advantage of all of that activity that's going on up and down I-20. One of the things that I thought was as we were envisioning this, and I'm working with our mapping folks on it, is kind of like a layer cake, if you will, where you've got along I-20 is where your industrial and your commercial, that's where that kind of goes. You've got some fingers out, and then you're moving, as you move away, and certainly as you move to the south, that we're getting into the heritage area and we're the overlay district, and we don't want dense development in that area. But you're kind of layering it. The further you get away from the highway, the less intense it is, the more residential, the more natural it is, but also keeping and clustering some of your commercial development. We want to put dense housing together with commercial and retail opportunities. We don't want pockets of dense housing off by themselves. It doesn't really help anything. Rather, they're quite supportive when you combine them. This to me is probably one of the more exciting pieces of this, and I promise we're getting close to the end. I promise. I think Stonecrest, and the team spent a lot of time. Again, I know I mentioned it before, but creating that sense of place, creating that unique identity that says you're in Stonecrest. And it's not we're going to the mall. It's we're going to Stonecrest, which might be around the mall, but it's not the mall. And you're creating this built environment, but also activities and interactions. And putting those things together helps you enliven a space, invigorate a space, create these vibrant spaces that then people want to go to. I don't know if I was driving down 75 a while ago, and I saw this really cute development right off of 75, and it was adorable, built environment, and there was nothing there. Like, there was no one there because they didn't do anything. They hadn't created any reason for people to be there. Community said to us, we want someplace to go. We want to take our family someplace. We want that center, and we don't have that. And I know that the city said that as well. So, we have some recommendations, and one of them is to, in the built environment, to know where you are. So to put together a signage program, common clear signage that says, I know there's now a sign as you get off the highway or if you're on the highway to say this is Stonecrest. It'd be really good to have some common signage as you're moving through, right? Even if it's districts that you're in the, this is the commercial district, this is the industrial district, this is, and I don't mean by zoning, I mean in general areas, this is sort of the nature district. This is, we've got trails in this area, something where you've got some common signage that says we're in Stonecrest. The second piece, which I think is really fun and it's your stepping stone, is to create temporary common places. So we want to build a town center. We know that that's of interest, but you can't do it right away. You've got to find a developer. You've got to secure land. There's all these development processes, but it really is working to create community spaces, temporary community spaces. You can do them with hosting an event. You can do, there's some great folks that do a lot of good tactical urbanism. You can have a music venue. You can do food trucks. You can do, you can set up, like a low wall or mural wall or chalk wall, or there's all sorts of things you can do to create these common spaces to get people together. Once people are used to getting together in those spaces, now we can start to put the built environment up. Versus if you build it, they will come, get people used to coming into a place. And then that actually helps to sell it to developers. So you get people coming into this area and then all of a sudden they can start, they see that that's a real opportunity. We know that town center is something that everyone has been very interested in. We were shown a couple of properties, general areas, where could you put it? At the end of the day, we really do think the properties over by the mall and that MARTA transit hub are really optimal because that's one, it is associated with Stonecrest. I mean, you get right off the highway, it's pretty much right there, but it's in the middle. It has easy access, it's got infrastructure, and I think it's probably your best bet. We weren't asked to design it. We were just asked to say, where do you think that it probably fits the best? And so we've got that. That having been said, some of these other properties in general have some wonderful opportunity for some smaller mixed use. You don't want everyone coming to one place. You want to create some pockets. So some multiple smaller scale mixed use developments around the city. And I've got some maps that I'm working with our folks to finalize about some general locations about that make sense from a development perspective. Again, it's not going to all happen overnight. These are things that will take time and will build and are in the long term, but some of them will certainly start happening a little bit faster. We're also at the mercy of the market. I'm sure Jetha will tell you that that's the truth right now when it comes to multifamily and mixed use, but there are some great opportunities. And then activities that enlivening these spaces, you could be coordinating with local businesses. It's all about promoting local businesses and artists offer music, art, entertainment, food and drink. You could do food truck events, rotate your locations, start to create a sense of interest and a sense of community that moves around, especially in places where you think you might be able to generate some interest in some development. So there's that. Business retention, sort of shifting gears a little bit. Existing businesses, those are your greatest job creators. I was reading 40% of all job creation comes from businesses that are in the, now I'm going to forget, 10 to 50 employee range. A small business, though, is under 500, which is kind of interesting. But I think that the business and retention and expansion, business retention and expansion opportunities are just as important as the attraction of new businesses. Because if you can start to get these entrepreneurs on their way and expanding, they will hopefully have an opportunity within the community to stay there. And if they increase their jobs, maybe get some of the Stonecrest residents to stay. We already talked about making sure we have the Stonecrest businesses. And then I know that Ashley had started interviews over the summer And in the spring, summer and spring, making sure that, I think these are just some very, very granular level recommendations when it comes to those existing businesses and how to leverage what those responses are. The targeted sectors, oh, we're getting close. We looked at using the locational quotients again and thinking about not just those numbers, but thinking about our labor profile, thinking about our infrastructure, thinking about the desired development, which people want. Professional services. I mean, you've got so many folks in professional services who are leaving Stonecrest. There's an opportunity for the smaller ones, as well as, again, looking at those regional economic drivers that are happening, those catalyst projects. How can you start to take advantage of the professional services, those tertiary sectors that are going to be coming with some of those projects? And those would probably be trying to put commercial sites, commercial markets a little tough. Not a lot of people are doing spec buildings right now because, or even in some cases, headquarters are really trying to do these multi-tenant commercial because of all the work from home. But there are some opportunities. There's some opportunities for some nice mixed use shared endeavors. Healthcare, it's a great building block for medical services, that Emory Hillendale Hospital campus. So that's fantastic. Music venues, we mentioned that out of the film. That helps to support that sense of place. It also helps you drive some of the film and entertainment initiatives that you want. Transportation and logistics. It will always be a strong sector. It is making sure that you get clean, the opportunities that you can leverage from Georgia Piedmont Technical College, I-20, these large industries, just being mindful about how much of that and where you put those. And then light manufacturing, again, very similarly looking at that regional opportunity. Manufacturing jobs pay well. They really do. There's so much automation in them now that the skill level's much, much higher. They can be very clean, and it does provide a nice base to I think somebody's talking about economic base earlier. We did look at retail, and it was really quite interesting. The primary, we've got all of the maps and all the other data in the appendices. They're way too small to put up on the presentation, but when they're looking at retail, what are the options? The trade area, created trade area, and the three primary trade areas are Panola Road, Turner Hill Road, and the mall at Stonecrest. And the mall is obviously a regional trip generator. People come from all over. Turner Hill, folks are coming to Walmart. Panola Road, folks are coming to Walmart and to Publix. The development opportunities, we're trying to reduce leakage, right? And really thinking about, I mentioned it before, dense residential and a community space, large community space for entertainment interaction would help. You're killing a couple birds with one stone. You create that, it will attract more residents, it will attract more visitors. It supports the desired retail that you all want. So we've got job generators and we've got service generators, and there is a real opportunity to create some of that retail. So the top, when we talk about retail and what the opportunities are, we talk about leakage. So right now, grocery stores should be glad to know are top of the list. There's a lot of money. There's $7.82 million within a 5-mile drive. You get up to $374 million in terms of unmet demand in that area. It's very, very significant. So groceries, both in general grocery and in specialty food stores. So, could you land another large grocer? Absolutely. I really, Christian, I'll have Andy talk through some of these data with you. He's really the expert on that, and it'll be in the report. But there's some food at home as the category, or groceries. Couple of other things, really looking at foot traffic analysis when we're looking at where folks are coming from. It's the mall is going to be that's the greatest driver in terms of retail analysis. And the Publix. And here in our very, very sophisticated, we don't want to pull out anybody's property. In that general area is a potential store opportunity for a grocery. Lots of land, lots of opportunity to be able to get that. And then where are folks, what are some of the other leakage opportunities from visits outside this that will challenge the mall? Well, they're going to the mall, or they're going to the theater, or they're going to Stone Mountain, or they're going to Conyers, to the Target and the Publix and the Walmart there, or they're going to the Tucker's Sam's Club. So those are pretty dispersed. If we can get those shoppers and patrons to that mall area, not just the mall itself, but developing the land around it, there's a great opportunity to create even a downtown streetscape, that creation of place, that sense of place that we were talking about, really envisioning. I encourage you all to look at some of the work that Ellen Dunham Jones, she's a professor at Georgia Tech, she's done with suburban shopping malls and rethinking shopping centers, about what those look like. And Edens is another one. They're doing a project in the Cab, North the Cab Mall, reworking that. So it's no longer a mall. They'll be reworking that to make it a much different space. Still a community space, still something where you've got shoppers, where you've got activities going on. It's kind of exciting to see. So we have sort of those large, we've got retail, we've got the big industries, industrial sectors, and commercial sectors that we're looking at. I mentioned at the outset, I think entrepreneurship is an incredible opportunity here, given the population, given the education, given just this history of the community going way back. Black entrepreneurship is one that has always faced very, very weighty challenges. Access to capital, intergenerational wealth, access to, you name it, they've probably hit it. Access to property, there've been a lot of pieces. Now you have Black Wall Street, which was intended to help facilitate that. And I think that's a great start. And I think there's an opportunity to leverage that and keep moving forward. There's an opportunity to be, as we mentioned earlier, sort of that repository for small businesses, for the assistance. There are a lot of programs. I've got so many for the appendices to be able for you all to have already, to be able to publish, and really sort of putting somebody on that as a way to say, we in the community believe very much in entrepreneurship. We believe in supporting minority entrepreneurship. Doesn't have to just be Black entrepreneurship, although certainly that is an area that needs to be addressed, and it fits well with Stonecrest. I mean, it's Black small businesses were the most adversely affected during the pandemic. A lot of them went out of business and have suffered, but they are on the rise. They're looking at about a 38% national increase in the last couple of years. So there's a great opportunity to foster that. And we know that with entrepreneurship support, you start small, 5, 10, you get over that 10 thresholds, economic gardening, you bring the mentors in, you bring the all the resources to bear, not just financial, but it can be business planning, it can be space, you can utilize the Stonecrest Development Authority at some point. There's room for everybody. And so I think that's a way in which the city can really differentiate itself, as much as we've talked about the built environment, and we've talked about creating that sense of place. As a physical space, we can also create that sense of place for entrepreneurship. I mentioned earlier on, Spelman has a great program when it comes to Black entrepreneurship and focusing on that. So our recommendations are really sort of creating a resource guide for entrepreneurship's program, especially those that are targeted to minority business owners. Maintaining that, a simple thing could be maintaining a list of minority businesses that someone can ask for if they want to start to get their own, start to work some supply chain, business to business opportunities. it can, the networking opportunities, getting the SCORE program involved, lots and lots of terrific opportunities to help support them. And I think, in talking with Ashley, we had a lot of businesses that city didn't even know about, right? So getting that cohesive and that excitement, and then watching those businesses grow, they get bought out. And then now you're starting to create great wealth. It's not just a 1 or 2 person mom and pop shop, but they start to build. They take advantage of what the opportunities are, and they're up to, 5, 10, 20, 50 people, and then they might move on. Maybe they get bought out, or maybe they continue on. So, and I think if one of the roles of economic development is to be a facilitator, and a facilitator of forums, and being known as the place where, these programs are being promoted, and come to the forum here in Stonecrest. Again, it's good press, it's good opportunity to establish who Stonecrest is. Bertie, I'm almost done. I think I got one more after this. I didn't forget about your tourist trail. Don't worry. I think it's incredibly important. I think as much as people come, and I explained this way early on to some of the folks, I just did a DeKalb County Shared Paths white paper on the importance of economic development, and how they can be a catalyst for economic development. Paths are. A lot of these paths are going through natural areas, but there are some hubs that they can connect to, and it's something that draws people out. And so, obviously economic development needs to be involved in it. I don't know that it's an economic development priority at this point. We got to crawl before we can walk before we can run. But absolutely put collaboration from the economic development department in siting and marketing key properties along that pathway to be able to, leverage. We've seen shared use paths just help areas grow exponentially, as well as what they do for just alternative transportation, being on a place where it's safe, multi-use paths, getting people out and really appreciating the community. So last piece, workforce, 2 more, sorry, workforce training. DeKalb Public Schools. I know we started out talking about this a long time ago. Feels like it's probably been an hour. And there are great opportunities when you keep working with those businesses in your community. You're working with through those business retention, expansion, workforce. I bet Ashley will tell me if I'm right. I can't see her so small. You're like this big, but workforce is an ongoing problem, no matter where you are. Am I right?
Right.
Yeah, getting workers there, working in that through that K-12 system. It doesn't, by the way, it doesn't matter what community, and it's not just Stonecrest, but getting everything from career days, working with local industry to provide guest speakers and tours of local businesses to get these kids excited. What's happening in that, behind that building, what's going on, what does entrepreneurship look like, using those kids maybe some of the elementary schools for career day, but getting the middle school students and those high school students prepped and excited, and the high schools and the middle schools are really looking forward to doing that. And then Arabian Mountain High School, as I mentioned way early on, is such a phenomenal opportunity. And I think that even any organization that's looking at environmental issues or environmental technology, partner and collaborate with them. And then, hey, you're welcome to come here to Stonecrest. We'd love for you to open a facility, or we'd love to help you launch your business, your entrepreneur, as an entrepreneur, getting that off the ground. It'd be wonderful. We'd love to have you have your home here in Stonecrest. Obviously, Georgia Piedmont Technical College and the transportation related industries, and connecting the schools and the residents. It'd be great to talking to them about having an open, when they open, making that open to the public so people can see. Commercial drivers are in high demand. And that's something that is an asset that you all have. And so, that's sharing that's in Stonecrest. And then certainly creating a working group from all these different stakeholders, organizations, so that they can be working together. The more you can leverage all these folks who are excited about it, the better off you are. Last one, I promise. Housing. And I can keep this one kind of brief. We already talked about the cost burden, but also limited availability. You're very, very limited on what is available in the area. And the future town center will require that dense housing to support those retail and commercial activities. it also reduces pressure on to the south that we're trying to preserve for the overlay district. And our recommendation is to really get a citywide housing study, a proper housing study. We did a high level analysis for this as we needed to do, but it needs to really get to the granular level. Over time, I have seen economic development go from smokestack chasing, I can go through the whole history of it, but moving into, more quality jobs, moving into environmental, and now it is really hitting the housing space because workers need housing and healthy communities need housing. So I think that economic developers and economic development have recognized that housing needs to be a part of the conversation. We call that, if you go back to my 5 things, we call it workforce infrastructure, not just workforce training, but workforce infrastructure, having places for people to live. And attracting good residential developers, multifamily, townhome, all sorts of different price points and products, but having a map showing planned and under construction residential developments to new businesses that are interested in coming in, so they feel like they might be able to get a workforce, a ready workforce. Also trying to attract developers and saying, this is where we'd like to see, development happen. Expediting permits and reducing permit fees on projects certainly helps housing at the end of the day. I know Jetha can tell you that housing, it's a numbers game. It is, how are we reducing the cost to be able to reduce the price, to be able to provide affordable housing. We're really advocating for transit-oriented development around the mall and around that future town center with that MARTA transit hub. We're looking at, how do you market those higher density sites with existing infrastructure, mixed use. So we're not just taking land and using it only for development, but trying to get developers who understand that in. And then working with planning and zoning to identify zoning adjustments for flexibility and ownership, size and type. Really, really looking at the zoning code and saying, how are we, I don't say do away with single family zoning. I know there are planners who say that. I think there's an opportunity to integrate certainly in different places, some flexibility. And then using the housing or the redevelopment authority for some tax savings and grants. There's some great opportunity there. I'm about to lose my voice, and I know you probably have a million questions, so I will stop.
Thank you, Lynn.
It's a lot. Okay.
Very, very informative, very informative.
Thank you very much, Lynn. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
In the interest of time, I'm gonna try to keep this part short as we can.
Since we're meeting on the 10th,
Mhm.
what I might suggest is if we just take this, you emailed out the study. We heard from Lynn, maybe the best thing to do is to actually come back this, read through it, digest it.
Right, we're gonna do that, but what I wanted to make sure is that there were any immediate questions that people could ask now. Just do a quick round robin of 1 question each and make it brief. If you've got any questions, then talk about what we want to do in this next meeting specifically, how we, the agenda items for that meeting is the sentence that we be sort of high level formulated, and then we'll close out. So are there any immediate questions? I wanted to start on this and Barney. No, the votes on the table. Did you have any questions?
Several,
Or just one quick.
I understand, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
I would like, is it question or comment?
Question.
Question. No questions per se at this time. I do have a number of comments, but I'm very much looking forward to reviewing the actual document.
Yeah, I agree. If you got a bullet comment that you want to make in bullet question, go ahead.
Take another look at the the new warehouse district, of which the Home Depot warehouse is only part. There is a new road that was financed by the city. There is already a second warehouse there, and there's going to be a major announcement about the tenant. I can't divulge it, but it's just about completed. It's on the other side of the road. And there are 3 more warehouses that are going back. They're all going to be served by that road. That is an example of governmental new infrastructure fostering new, relatively clean development in the area. It's a major kickstart for the industrial area, and I don't know that enough attention has been paid to it. But that, I think, would be at the top of your list there with the Home Depot warehouse. Actually, I would modify that to new warehouse district, starting with that.
Bernie, can I ask you a question in
Yes, sir.
regards to that? Was that user driven or was that spec?
That was user driven.
Okay.
All right, that was driven by Trammell Crow. And Trammell Crow got a lot of help. It got, I think $55 million in bond held from the side to cab.
Okay.
The city purchased the road that Trammell Crow built into the properties for $2 million. But over and above that, it was designed not just for that project or Home Depot. It was designed to open up several hundred acres for a new warehouse district. A new industrial park, if you will, within the industrial park.
Not Home Depot, the one that is user driven,
I'm sorry,
the one that they're building right now.
Tim Knights?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was not spec.
Okay.
My understanding, they have a tenant.
Yeah.
And the tenant is something really major.
I was, when Ashley was taking me through the tour, I immediately saw that. It's like that didn't just happen. It was a respect what's happening in this area right now by Corona. So that was user driven.
The 3 warehouses that are going to be to the west, behind them may be spec. I don't know about that. I don't have the information on that.
Okay.
All right.
Shelby.
No comment.
Andrew.
Oh, wait.
Okay. Dave.
No questions now. Lynn, that was great.
Thanks.
That was great, and I like the cohesiveness of the report.
Thank you.
I will also offer, because this is something I've done before, if you guys want somebody to get all of the questions and comments and integrate them into a single document,
We're gonna talk about that.
I would be glad to do that.
Yeah, we're gonna do that.
I need to read the report before I can comment.
Okay.
Thank you.
A lot.
Right, it is. I've got some questions as well, but I'm gonna save mine until we digest the report as well. What I'd like to suggest that we do now is to at least kind of bullet from the committee what you think ought to be the topics from this discussion that would that will essentially guide our next meeting. As a point of suggestion, if it helps, I'm thinking that you read the report, you jot your questions down, and you jot down any recommendations that you want to make to the city so that we can in fact formalize, get some answers to those questions, and then formalize our recommendations to the city based on our understanding of the report.
That sounds great. If you're taking me up on that offer, I would ask that each question or comment reference the page number in the document.
Okay.
If possible.
Lynn, with regard to the slides that we saw, is there a description on methodology, or is that something that someone could answer really quickly if in the interim we had some questions about how something was determined, especially if it impacts one of your recommendations?
Could you give me an example? I mean, we have a general methodology in there. Could you give me an example of what one of your questions?
Yeah, there was one slide where you were talking about leakage. You were talking about retail leakage. So like, that might be one where it might help me to understand how you got there so that I can think about that in anticipation of the next meeting. So I'm just saying, if there's any questions like that that come up, could we, maybe kick those over and get those answered?
Absolutely. And yes, there's a whole methodology on those data points and appendices that would be too far. Even that is, as I said, this is being sent over to our graphics person. Normally I would put a lot less information on a slide, but so there are a lot of data that back those up and the methodology of how those data are collected. So yes, the answer to that is yes. And if there's any really, and I appreciate Dave, the cohesive comment, as I go through, I always think of plans as like having ribbons where you start them at the end and you're kind of going around and you weave them back in the end. And so for us, as we're going through this and why your comments are so important, and thank you, Bernie, it was briefly addressed early on about the city buying Stonecrest Industrial Way. But those are really important comments that we want to be able to take. Look, I want to give you guys this plan so you can go and implement it. And if it's up to this committee, if you want to send me some of those comments initially, I'm happy to take them because it's as we're trying to finish this in some ways and finish this up. And the more feedback we have, if it's something that we feel we can address, or we just say, we're not able to address this, it's beyond the scope, or whatever happens, that's okay. I think the feedback, this is your plan, the city's plan, and we want to make sure that it's doing what you all need to do, given the scope that we were provided in the beginning. So I'm happy to take any of those. If you say, hey, could you, especially as we're going to try to format this, takes a little bit of time. If you say, could you provide that methodology in there? Absolutely. Could you put it up in the text? Happy to do that. Could you just expand on this piece a little bit? Happy to do that. Does that help?
This is like what we did with the music, film, entertainment industry. Is we went out and we took the 15 points and we put together a survey, which then went out to the committee, which then they all filled out. We met with you again. We went over those findings from the survey and talked about that, and then that was attached to the plan, which was submitted to City Council for approval. So.
All right, so we got hold on one second. So we got a plan for the next meeting. And what I'd like
to what it is. What is it?
what?
The plan.
For the next meeting, we're gonna read the report. We're gonna write down your questions. And I prefer that you go ahead and write them. You don't have to send them out, but you go ahead and write them down in an email so that we can consolidate them after we get through discussing them here. And whatever recommendations that you would recommend to the city based on your understanding of the point.
So the plan for the next meeting is to discuss the questions and recommendations.
Correct. Okay. We good with that?
One thing I'd like to suggest is that as a specific topic,
Okay.
we carve out the recommendations and questions that are around things that we simply think won't work.
Well,
And
I mean, you can include that in your recommendations in terms of, I'm trying to make sure that we have a process that we can go through as efficiently as we possibly can. Because all of these are just simply recommendations. So I'm saying if you put your questions on the table, you put your recommendations on the table, we can submit that to the city. And then they can decide how they want to treat it. That's all. So you get a chance to put your recommendations in place, even the things that you think won't work. But I would ask that if you put some things in there that don't work, at least put something around it, suggest that, your validation for why it won't work. And ideally, you've got some validated sources for suggesting that it won't work, other than, beyond your opinion. I mean, it's not that your opinion wouldn't matter, it's important, but I would like to make sure that. Yeah, I just want to make sure that, what we give the city is something that they can act on.
And what's our methodology for moving through the questions and recommendations?
We're gonna discuss.
In what order?
In what order? I mean, we can do a round table, we can.
Can we maybe go through the document and do like all the housing ones and all the whatever ones?
And let's look at this from the standpoint of the recommendations. Plain and simple. The data is the data. You can't get around it. That's what it is. But from a recommendations perspective, I think what would behoove us is probably doing like we did with the music, film, and entertainment study, which is creating a survey. And in that survey, here's the recommendation based off of this slide, this slide, this slide, and this slide. And then we send it out. And then from that, we sit down and you rank and you put in your opinion. And in that study by itself, there was 2 of the 15, where a person strongly disagreed with the finding, which is fine. You could disagree, it's still the finding, of the plan, and that's where that gets communicated back to council in the adoption of the plan. And I think that that's what's really important, is to sit there and say, okay, you know, we have this, and it's getting that feedback and getting that understanding, and then taking from that and building the action plan, which is the next step for me, to accomplish the goals, which were the recommendations in the plan. And where that lies, where that sits is completely different. We're in a really good stage right now, if you ask me, from an economic development standpoint, that we have these plans, they've been created. And what we do now is take your feedback, everything as the committee, insert that into the final plan that will be submitted for approval, and then we drop and create the work plan based off of that plan and your comments and suggestions. And then this doesn't just end, you know, I understand this is the Economic Development Strategic Plan Committee. Everything, so what we do next is think tanks and bringing together all of the industry partners, whether or not it's industrial think tanks or whatever else, and having those discussions and bringing the community together and talking and sharing, and you know, where Lynn talked about the quarterly newsletter and everything. I have a document that we will be putting together that's called Talking Points, and in that it details, here's what the strategic plan is, this is where we're at in accomplishing those goals, and this is the timeline that was adopted to accomplish those goals. And then it's a reporting out to you, but it's also so that you become economic developers, because we're all going to start talking about the same thing, the same data, and we're going to have that same bit of information so that we can go out and we can share that information and know that. Yeah.
You know, so the survey, that helped me a little bit, because
Just getting a bunch of questions together doesn't get it.
yeah, because I mean, I probably would, just find myself.
Well, with the survey, if you guys fill out the survey, then in the next meeting, we can actually.
That was my, okay, so the survey goes right out, bam, it's ranking, it's opinion, it's insight or what have you. And then maybe I've got a couple of notes about why I said what I said or whatever.
And then we go over that in the next meeting.
Got it. I don't know if that
But let me the meeting stuff first, and then we'll.
I don't wanna take divert you from the question period, because I have a question.
Okay, but hold on.
Okay, so then the second thing, so you guys can send the survey out like pretty quickly, right? Way in advance, have enough time to do that. And then, do you have the money already in your budget to do the roadshow stuff you're talking about, like meeting with all these people?
We're at the, yeah.
So just think about it.
Yeah. So when I'm trying to,
Roadshows and think tanks are part of what I do.
Okay.
You know, that's.
what I'm trying to make sure that the committee does, and I think the survey is a good tool to use in this process, is after you have a chance to read the document, that whatever questions that you have, go ahead and formulate them, so that they are not, spread along. Whatever recommendations that you want to make, including the information that you get from the survey that you might include those as well, so we can have a discussion about what all we want to include, maybe get questions answered, and what all we want to include in our recommendation to the city from this committee. And which is what we're trying to get.
And my only comment was that I was just looking for a structured, orderly way to work through it with maximum efficiency.
Right. And one way to do it is the way that you suggested, but I mean, I'm open, and that is, you're saying, take it section by section, write your question down, write your recommendation down, and just that we will go through each section together until we get to the final piece.
That is the way.
Okay.
I still think I would prefer to go forward with the survey, you write your questions in there. And these are all questions that, quite frankly, the economic development strategic plan is done, it's fine finished. So from a recommendation standpoint, it's about looking at those recommendations and saying, and here's my notes, here's my thoughts on what this recommendation is. and moving forward, and that's where the survey really does come in. It gives you that time to sit there and to put that together, and then, again, like I said, in that next meeting, we're not just going through and figuring out, okay, you've got notes, I've got notes, Bernie's got, everybody's got, it's all together already. And it's literally in one document that we said, we deliver to you, and we talked about, and it's got all of those things in there, it's not all of us coming together with different thoughts, do you understand?
Yes.
Yeah, it gives you time to
So
think
you're
about.
gonna send that to Dave so he
Yeah.
can collect all of our comments and then he can send it back.
No, I want your comments individually in the survey, so the survey
The
is,
survey
So
that
we
he's
send
gonna
all
collect for
comments.
us.
no, we're collecting it in the, yeah, we're gonna.
Okay.
Church.
Okay,
We send all the comments to you, you organize them, you turn it into a survey, you send it to us, we respond to the survey.
The survey is
Survey.
created. The survey is
Surveys
created
are
based off
opportunity
the-
to provide them data.
And then you.
Okay,
Right.
which is different from what you were suggesting.
Yeah, the survey says
Right.
they get data from us.
Whatever works.
I like that.
Either way,
Well,
it all
I'm
gets.
just looking for-
Find out.
Right.
It all comes to the same basis. It all comes in, we talk about it in the next meeting.
okay.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, is there any reason we could not do both?
I don't think there is a reason we can't do that.
I would certainly want to suggest that we'll defer to our new economic development director. Follow the survey route. I think there would also be benefit to eventually, as soon as possible, generating our own report of recommendations. I'll say that it's hard for me to think of any of the advisory committees, and maybe Dave or Jeva can correct me if they remember one. But over the last 2, 3, 4 years, city advisory committees, has there ever been a actual written report from a committee?
Well, that's what I'm hoping that we will do. And
Yeah.
that's why-
I
Yeah,
think
which is why I appreciate the survey piece. But I just want to make sure that the survey piece or that the report that we submit actually includes all of our thinking. I don't know how to get all of our thinking without taking information from all of y'all.
Right.
As opposed to just simply the survey.
Well, that's where,
Yeah.
but the survey is where you would put your notes,
Yeah, I
and
think-
then we would read those notes. So it's kind of doing the same thing, it's just a difference between writing it out and actually just having it.
Right, one of the things that I guess I was anticipating that this committee would do is to submit a report to the economic development part.
But that would be in the recommendations of this survey, because the report would have all of that in it.
I think the two concepts are.
I think
they're different.
Complementary,
That's fine.
you know,
I think they're complementary, but I do think they're different.
they are
That's
different.
fine.
And
Yeah.
sometimes it really helps to say something 2 different ways.
Yeah.
Help people understand.
I'd like, if you're good with doing both.
Yeah.
Fine by me.
Ms. Smith has been bursting to ask a question.
All right,
I know, I just have a great deal of experience.
I'm seriously does. I just want to make sure that we close out our work that we're gonna do, and then we can take some questions from the audience. So we're good for the next meeting on what we're gonna do and what we're gonna be prepared to do in that meeting.
I'm good.
And are we saying the next meeting is the tenth? Yes, so how quickly are we gonna get this survey? We realize the tenth is in 2 weeks.
Within the next 2 or 3 days, I should have.
And that'll give you time to read and digest
Right,
it,
exactly.
because no one's gonna be answering the
That's
question.
right.
But this.
That's right.
So my question is actually about the process.
Yes.
I could mention that every second, so I'm a professional facilitator, so this is, and Fab knows that, because I did that through STIE. But, so my question's about the process, what's the timeline? What is the process for those of us who participate or others who may not be here watching or watch afterwards to contribute to this, given
Well-
that there was one community meeting?
Well, I would suggest that, that whoever you have contact with on the committee, that whatever questions or concerns that you have, you send them to that person. They can, or you can send them to the economic development director,
There you go, right there.
and that way you can get that input, but you can,
All
or the chair, right,
any single person is not gonna have everything.
right, but keep keep in mind, this is not a decision-making body, this is only a recommendation body.
Only recommendation.
Well, and so the survey, well, just a suggestion, the survey might be a good information gathering for all of you.
Yeah, I
You
think,
can write your.
right, exactly, I think it would be excellent, I think it's an excellent solution,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And so I guess I wanna understand what the timeline is for the recommendations that the council is expecting. from-
That would be between the Economic Development Department and the council.
Okay,
Right. We're just giving the Economic Development Department our feedback on what we read.
right, but I wanna know, as a member of the public,
Right.
when can I expect city council to be making a decision? Or do they have a timeline that they have given to you that says we need feedback by this date so we can vote?
So this is September. And what I would prefer is that we meet on the tenth. And then we meet one more time to make sure that we have everything, and then I can submit in December for that council meeting for approval of the economic strategic plan for this, with the notes attached. Because what happens next is actually about a 2 or 3 month process where I'm putting together the work plan to implement this, and I don't want to, honestly, I don't want to be in March and just then implementing all of this. I would rather be way ahead of the curve in doing that, and that's part of the reason why I want that survey.
Right.
Because then that gives me all of your thoughts automatically.
Exactly.
And I can automatically be implementing and putting in play
Right.
that for next year, because January is beginning of the year for me. And I'm a metrics and accountability person, so I'll be driving these timelines and due dates and things like that.
Yeah.
And I want to be able to hit them.
Exactly. And
I
then,
would just keep in mind that there's an election in November, so there's
And you got
not.
the holidays, so you really only have about 3 weeks, for
Right.
November and December.
I don't work in the election cycle.
right.
Well, you have to, because you work for a city and your bosses are elected officials, so
I'm
that,
aware, but
that's just the reality that we exist in, is that that's going to affect their ability to make decisions and their timeline to make decisions, as well as potentially who is making the decisions. The only thing that I was gonna suggest, and I think this gets back to the issue that Bernie was bringing up, and I think Dave as well, is that it seems to me that there is an opportunity for facilitation after you collect all of the information in the survey. I don't think that you are going to get to the heart of what people are trying to communicate simply by reading their comments. You're gonna have to facilitate some collective discussion amongst this group
right.
in order to really tease out what people are trying to say and come up with some recommendations from the committee to give to council so that they're meaningful. So that's my last.
And I just wanna make sure, look. What are each of us doing next, other than reading the plan?
Taking the survey and what ancillary things to the survey that you want to add to your input to this process is what you'll be doing. And we'll be discussing that in our next meeting, what we did with the survey and or whatever additional questions that we want, so that we can give the economic development director a document.
So the ancillary questions, the concerns and recommendations don't go with the survey.
No, they do.
They do.
They're gonna get, right.
Okay, so we're doing nothing till we get the survey.
No, you're creating a doc, right, and you can formulate,
No,
and you can formulate what, you can make the notes you wanna make.
I would heavily suggest reading that.
Right.
While an hour and a half of Lynn's time is very important, I feel like 73 pages of
Yeah.
information.
A lot of.
I think Lynn should go pet the dog down.
The dog behaves.
So we go.
I'm sorry, just real
And
quick.
yeah.
I'm sorry, Dad.
I'm gonna email,
Okay,
because that's what I was doing.
okay.
Will we get an opportunity to get a survey? We community.
It goes to this.
It's to this committee. Right, and if you've got something that you wanna make some add to, or if you wanted to talk to somebody to give you a copy of some of the questions that are on there, you can email them and ask them.
Is the document gonna be made public?
I don't know if it would be,
I
but
need to talk to the city manager.
yeah.
Be a great idea.
It will be accessed by an open record.
Right.
Yeah.
For all else fails.
All right.
Oh, and we adjourned?
Yeah, if that's it, then meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
We'll see you later.
I'm ready.
So you would-
Yeah.